They say if you want to earn more, you need to learn more. That means as automation engineers, if you want to put yourself at the head of the crowd, there's no better strategy than educating yourself as much as you can. And maybe the most important part of that strategy is ensuring that you stay on the top of the latest trends and developments happening in the industrial automation field. And that's where RealPars can help. As promised last month, we are bringing you an informative video about a brand new PLC, and you're going to hear all about it from one of the brains behind the technology, Martin Boers of the German PLC manufacturing company, PLCnext Control. If there's one man that has his fingers on the pulse of industrial automation, it's Martin. I sat down with him to talk about the new PLC and discuss how it's going to deliver endless possibilities to you as a PLC programmer in your career. I know it sounds like a huge promise, but as you'll soon see, this PLC delivers. Not only you can use your typical PLC programming languages such as ladder logic, function block diagram, structured text, and more with it, you can also use other common programming languages such as C++, C#, Rust, Java, among many others. That means the sky is practically the limit as to which programming languages you want to use, opening up a world of ways to optimally match the PLC language with a project you are working on as a PLC programmer. But that's not all. Martin is going to share some other cool operations you can execute with this new PLC, so get ready to watch and learn. Also, as with every RealPars video, if you have any questions about this new PLC technology, just put them in the comments below. We have asked Martin to personally answer all of your questions, so be sure to use this opportunity to pick the brain of one of the best PLC programmers in the world. Now, let's get to the good stuff. So thanks, Martin, for making the time for this interview. And let's just start with the simple question of what is the PLCnext technology?
Yeah, so we consider PLCnext technology to be sort of ecosystem, and we have sort of 4 pillars to that ecosystem. One is the PLCnext Control, obviously just the PLC hardware with the firmware running on that. The next is PLCnext Engineer, which is the programming software that we use to configure the controllers.
Yes.
Then we have the PLCnext Store, which is an online marketplace that we'll talk about later. And then we have the PLCnext Community, which is where we all get together and share our experiences and learn from each other.
Okay. For the next question, let's go with PLCnext Control. So can we let us know a little bit about the hardware and like more details about the hardware of PLCnext technology?
Yeah, so the PLCnext Control, it would be familiar to PLC programmers. This is our entry-level PLC. That's the AXE F2152. It's got an ARM processor, and this is our top-of-the-range PLC that we have at the moment. This is a RFC, a remote field controller. So this is among the most powerful PLCs on the market. It's a very high-end unit, but most people would be starting with the entry-level unit that you can see here. And this runs a Linux operating system. But you can also program it just in your typical IEC 61131 languages, and obviously you can expand it with I/O modules from our Axioline range. So here we've just got one digital I/O module, but you can put up to 63 I/O modules, digital, analog, communications modules, and so on. That's 63 I/O modules on one DIN rail.
Okay.
But of course you can expand it as well on a Profinet network. So however many hundred of Profinet devices you can have on a Profinet network.
Yeah, can you probably show them some of the hardwares that we have in there, like behind the scene?
Yeah. So
like some of the extensions.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously this is, as I say, a digital I/O module. We also have left side extension modules. So we have a PCI Express bus on the left-hand side of the CPU.
Yes.
And you can expand that with extra Ethernet ports. So it comes with a built-in Ethernet adapter, but you can add a second Ethernet adapter to the left side. So for example, you could have your lower level Profinet network from this Ethernet adapter, and then you could connect up to your corporate network and just keep those 2 networks isolated, which is pretty good practice.
Yeah. This is like a common practice to keep these like office data away and separate from the like actual manufacturing data. Okay, so can you just give us some application examples of people using this PLCnext Control?
Yeah. Well, it's already being used in a fairly wide range of industries and applications.
Yes.
The RFC, the top of the range one, that's pretty popular in the wind industry.
Yes.
Because they have some quite complex calculations that need to be done, and they need a high performance PLC. The process industries, the entry-level PLC is good for, say, little sort of skid-mounted units, say, in the process industries.
Yes.
Whereas the top-end PLC is good for, plant-wide controls, because the integrated safety controller obviously can take care of all the SIL-rated control applications. The automotive industry, again, the RFC is used in automobile assembly. And we've even used this one in a roller coaster as well.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that before. Okay,
so that's just
cool.
a fun application, but quite serious, obviously, where you need a high level of safety. So.
Yeah, that's really good. So, and one of the questions that like viewers might have is that like how many IOs this PLC hardware supports?
Yeah. So as I say, you can have 63 IO modules, digital, analog, serial. So if you're talking just digital, you could have 32 digital channels on one module. So that gives you, thousands of digital IO channels. For analog, we have IO modules with up to 8 analog channels in one module. So again, 63 analog modules, 8 channels per module.
So we're talking thousands of inputs and outputs, even for this small PLC, like a small CPU that we have here.
That's right, and that's just directly connected to the CPU, but of course you can expand that over a Profinet network, so you're talking about thousands and thousands of IO. I mean, even your old IO, people might be familiar with this old Inline IO, which Phoenix Contact's been selling for quite a while, and you'll often find that all wired up already, connected to an old CPU. What you can do now is take out your old CPU, put an adapter onto the PLCnext control, and then reuse your old inline I/O with this new CPU. So it means you don't have to replace any of your old I/O. You can just use it with the new CPU.
So if you have like old facilities and you're using an old control panel, you can use this PLC and fit it into the old control panel. Sure. Okay, perfect. Is there anything that we want to cover about the hardware and PLC control?
Well, I suppose it's worth mentioning that the PLCnext Control itself is running a Linux operating system. It's an open operating system, so you can open a secure shell session
for the first time in the industry, or not?
Yeah, there's not many people doing that. And what Phoenix Contact have done is taken that Linux operating system, we've added the real-time extensions to the kernel, so it means we can operate it as a true deterministic real-time PLC. We've got our IEC 61131 runtime running on that, so traditional PLC programmers can just treat it like a traditional PLC. They can program it in ladder logic, function block diagram, structured text, or sequential function chart, any of the standard IEC 61131 languages, and they can just treat it like a standard PLC and be very comfortable in that environment. But because it's an open Linux operating system, it means your IT developers, people coming from an IT background, your C++ programmers, your C# programmers, Rust, Java, they can all operate on this platform and be quite familiar with that. They can access the operating system directly, run their programs directly on the operating system, use the real-time extensions, or integrate those programs in with the IEC 61131 program. So that's what Phoenix Contact's done, really integrated the IT world with the traditional PLC world.
So you can, like for one PLC program, you can literally have two pieces, one with the typical PLC programming language and one with the like C++ or Java or
That's right.
something.
So both these types of developers can work together on the same project and they can integrate their programs together on the one platform. So it really brings those IT and automation worlds together.
Okay, so like some of the complex, like for example, some of the complicated stuff that is very hard to do in ladder logic, you can just bring in an IT person, then they can do it in C++, for example, right?
That's right. And there's also a lot of open source projects on GitHub written in C++ that you can utilize. So a lot of communications protocols, software stacks, that sort of thing. So for example, MQTT, there's an open source project on GitHub. We can cross-compile that for the PLCnext platform.
Yes.
And we're not writing our own MQTT client from scratch. We're utilizing open source software that's already on the web. So it really brings a lot of power to
I see.
to the PLC.
So I have a question that might be like that might sound silly, but I'm sure that a lot of people might have this question.
No silly questions.
But the thing is that like when you talk, I don't know anything about Linux operating system. You know, I'm an electrical engineer. So when you say this software is based Linux operating system, does that mean we cannot install the software on Windows?
So what that means is that the PLC itself is running a Linux operating system. We have a software development kit, so people come from the IT world will know software development kits. They can cross-compile open source projects, cross-compile their own C++ programs for this platform. But the engineering software, PLCnext Engineer, that's running on a Windows PC.
Okay, so you can actually install the software on a Windows.
Correct.
When we're talking Linux, that's a different thing.
Yeah, that's right. The PLCnext Engineer, the programming or the IEC programming software, that runs on a Windows PC, whereas the PLC itself is running a Linux operating system.
Oh, okay, perfect. So let's move on to the PLCnext Engineer. The software that we've already talked a little bit about.
So I have that open on the PC beside me here. This is just this would be fairly familiar to traditional PLC programmers. So we have our programming workspace. I have a function block diagram program open there. Here's a function block that's written in structured text, and we instantiate those programs on the PLC and we download that to the PLC. We do all our hardware configuration here as well by dragging and dropping hardware modules into the project. So yeah, it's a really familiar environment for traditional PLC programmers. And we can also integrate in our C++ programs into the IEC program as well, just by importing libraries over here. We can also extend our programs. So rather than reinventing everything from scratch, we can import libraries that other people have created. And we can even look for those libraries elsewhere, like from the PLCnext Store, for example.
Yes.
We can download function block libraries from the PLCnext Store and integrate them into our own program.
That is why you call it open source, right? Is it or not?
Yeah, so we call it an open platform because, really you can integrate in, as I say, IEC programs, function blocks written in IEC languages. You can integrate function blocks written in C#, written in C++, using MATLAB Simulink, for instance. You can integrate simulations written in MATLAB Simulink directly into an IEC program, and that's used in the wind industry, for example, for simulating the flow of air over the turbines. So that's why we call it the open platform, because you can really use any language.
So the open platform means that like other people can literally write a PLC program, and then you can use those PLC program in your application as well. That's right. Why we call it open platform.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. And we share all that through the PLCnext Store, which you might want to look at next.
So let's move on to the PLC Store.
Yeah, so we were talking about PLCnext Engineer and how we can use functions or import libraries, function block libraries. So the one way we can get function block libraries is from the PLCnext Store. So the PLCnext Store is a website that we have. There you go, plcnextstore.com. And this is like a marketplace. So as a developer, I can browse the store and say, for example, I'd like to get some function blocks that help me with analog input modules. I can download this analog technology function block library onto my development PC. I can import that library into my PLCnext Engineer project, and then I have all those function blocks available. So that's one type of app that we have on the PLCnext Store. So it should be as easy to load an app as it is loading an app onto your smartphone.
Oh, okay. So this is basically a new, you can consider it as an app store for industrial automation space, right? Where you can go just download an app and then use that program into your project, right? And people sell their project there. You can also create, should they create a developer account or something to be able to sell their applications?
Yeah, so it depends how you're going to use the store. So if you're a developer of automation solutions for end users, then yeah, you're developing your project using PLCnext Engineer, and you can browse the store and use whatever you find in the store in your project. On the other hand, you may be a vendor, an app vendor, in which case you can create a contributor account on the PLCnext store. A contributor account, yeah, and then you can upload your apps to the store, and you can even charge money for them.
Yeah, you can even make money selling your apps, selling your industrial like PLC programs, right?
Yeah, so if you develop a function block library that does something really neat that you think will be applicable
What
to
would
a
be an
wide
example?
range. Well, so for example, MQTT.
Like a simpler one.
Let's say a particular type of calculation. I don't know, maybe some sort of calculation in fluid dynamics or something that
is complicated again.
Yeah, okay.
Like something like a pump station.
Yeah, okay. So one type of app we actually have on here is a solution app. Yeah. So a solution app, it's not just a library of functions, it's actually a complete solution. So let's say you manufacture pump stations and all your pump stations are the same, and you want to include, control capability with that pump station hardware.
Yeah, but you say that if you buy this pump station from our factory, then you can go download the PLC program from the PLCnext store.
Exactly, and that will turn your PLCnext Control hardware into a pump station controller. So it takes over your whole PLC, turns it into a pump station controller. You'd configure that app using a web-based configuration tool, perhaps. And then, that could even send information up to a cloud-based service from your pumping station.
Okay,
so if you're the vendor of that pump station, you can put your pump station control app in the store. People who buy your pump station can download your app from the store.
So you can sell both the pump station and also the PLC and PLC program for that at the same time using the PLCnext store. Perfect. So is there anything else that we need to cover about PLCnext store? I think the open source function advantage that we have.
Yeah, so like I say, things like the MQTT client, that's really like an open source software written by Paho. You'll find that in GitHub. That's been cross-compiled for the PLCnext Control platform and then made available on the store. So that's what we call a function extension app. And
function extension app.
So that really extends the function of the PLCnext Control. So you can run that alongside your ladder logic program, and you can add MQTT communications capability to your PLC just by downloading this function extension app from the store.
Okay, so just to make sure that viewers know what this what was that
MQTT,
again?
so it stands for message queuing telemetry transport.
This is an application that enables you to connect the data, office data, to the factory data, right?
Yeah, so if you're running an MQTT broker, let's say in your office, then the device in the factory or out in the field can publish messages to the MQTT broker and can subscribe from messages. So it's a method of transmitting messages to and from the field up to a broker, whether it's in the cloud or in your office. And it's an industry standard way of doing this. So a lot of different devices from different manufacturers all understand how to transfer MQTT messages. So really you can integrate this into, in an open sort of way.
Yeah. And one of the other things that we discussed earlier was that with this open source thing that we have, like feature that we have for this PLC, you can literally have a PLC programmer like a controls engineer working on a PLC program at the same time, someone with an IT background, both can work on the same project, right? How does that work? Can you a little bit elaborate on that?
Yeah, so your traditional PLC programmer would be writing their program using ladder logic or function block diagram, sequential function chart, whatever they're comfortable with.
Yes.
They can just use PLCnext Engineer or Code Assist if they like to write their IEC program. At the same time, the C++ developer, they can download an extension for Eclipse. And IT developers would be familiar with Eclipse.
Yes.
They can write their C++ program. They can use open source software from GitHub. They can build their C++ program, and then they can package that as a PLCnext Engineer library, and then the IEC programmer can import that library and treat it just like a program that was written in ladder logic, for instance.
So what I understand is that for one project, we can have some part of the logic, some part of the PLC program written in ladder logic, FPD or STL or whatever type of PLC programming language, and some of the parts that are really hard to write with these typical PLC programming languages, you can just hire an IT, like an IT person, people with IT background, and they can write those sections in C++, for example, and then we can combine those two in one PLC project, right?
That's
PLC
right.
Programming project.
That's right. So if it suits C++, you can get a C++ program. C#, you can integrate C# programs into here as well. MATLAB Simulink, a lot of process simulation is done using MATLAB Simulink. You can actually integrate MATLAB Simulink real-time programs into your IEC programs as well.
Okay,
so it's really quite flexible.
Perfect. So do you want, at the end of the video, do you want the viewers to do like any do you have any call to action for the viewers?
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be great if people could get their hands on a PLCnext starter kit, something similar to this. Once they've done that, what they should do is visit the PLCnext community. So that's at PLCnext-community.net. And this is where we all sort of get together and share our experience. We learn, we teach.
We'll put a link for this PLCnext community in the description below the video. And also you can just Google it, PLCnext community, and it will pop up.
Yeah, all the manuals are on there. We've got getting started guides, we've got videos, we've got tutorials, e-learning, FAQs. We've got links to our YouTube channel where, again, there's a lot of tutorial videos, some getting started guides that you can follow along with.
That is really helpful. So if you want to learn some getting started videos on YouTube, you can just search for PLCnext, like PLCnext Contact on YouTube.
Yeah, that's right.
And also we'll put a link for the YouTube channel on the description below this video as well. Yeah,
that's right. For the more advanced users, our C++ programs, we have a GitHub channel as well. So a lot of the software we developed, some of it that you'll see in the store is actually available as open source software on our GitHub channel. So yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, you can go onto the forum in the PLCnext community. You can ask your question. You usually get an answer within 24 hours. It might not even be answered by somebody from PLCnext Contact. The community is very active and we all help each other. And once you build something that you're proud of, you can actually post in the makers blog. We consider ourselves a little community of makers. And yeah, we're all proud of what we build, and we often post on makers blog. So for example, somebody connected their Alexa or their Google Home to a PLCnext Control.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and they have a little example of how to do that. So yeah, and I mean, it sort of seems like a bit of a fun example, but that's the way industry is going. Voice control, face recognition, camera, optical recognition, and so on. So yeah, all these types of applications are described in the makers blog.
So they can post those at PLCnext makers, right?
At PLCnext-community.net, and then go into the makers blog, and you can see what other people have done, and you can post your own.
You can also just Google a PLCnext makers. I think
that's
the
right.
link will pop up.
That'll find you there. Yeah. And for a bit of fun, you can also go onto our Instagram channel. That's instagram.com/PLCnext. And that's a great way to have a bit of fun and just connect with everybody in the community as well.
Yeah, you can just search PLCnext on Instagram and it will pop up. And we also, again, will put a link for that in the description below the video. Okay, thank you, Martin, for making the time and sharing your knowledge with the RealPars community. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. I hope you learned something new from Martin, and I assure you, you're learning from one of the best in the business. As I said at the start, staying on the top of what's new is a big part of getting ahead as an automation engineer. Again, if you have any questions about what Martin and I discussed in the video, feel free to put them in the comments below. Martin will personally answer all of your technical or other questions. If you want to learn even more about the PLCnext technology, make sure to follow PLCnext on Instagram. Just type in PLCnext on Instagram and their page will pop up. You'll also find a link to their Instagram page in the video description. Also, following the PLCnext community can be another great online resource for you to stay on the top of what's new in PLC technology. They have numerous step-by-step video tutorials available online that can help you learn how to get started with configuring and programming of the PLCnext control. Also, be sure to check out their website at plcnext-community.net or just Google the word PLC Next. You'll also find the link in the video description. Thanks for joining RealPars for another career-changing video. See you next time.